Reflections of a Russian Statesman by Konstantin Petrovich Pobyedonostseff. Chapter 5. The Press. From the day that man first fell, falsehood has ruled the world, ruled it in human speech, in the practical business of life, in all its relations and institutions. But never did the father of lies spin such webs of falsehood of everyday kind as in this restless age, when we hear so many falsehoods uttered everywhere on truth. With the growing complexity of social problems increases the number of relations and institutions pervaded with falsehood through and through. At every step appears some splendid edifice bearing the legend, "Here is truth." Do you enter? You tread on falsehoods at every step. Would you expose the falsehoods which have angered you? The world will turn on you with anger greater still, and bid you trust and preach that this is truth, and truth unassailable. Thus we are bidden to believe that the judgments of newspapers and periodicals, the judgments of the so-called press, are the expression of public opinion. This, too, is a falsehood. The press is one of the falsest institutions of our time. But who will dare to stand against the forces of opinion, the opinion of the world on men and institutions? Such is the nature of man, that each one of us, whatever his words or actions may be, takes care that he shall conform with the opinions of the people. The man is yet unborn who can truly boast himself free from this servility. In our age, the judgment of others has assumed an organized form and calls itself public opinion. Its organ and representative is the press. In truth, the importance of the press is immense, and may be regarded as the most characteristic fact of our time, more characteristic even than our remarkable discoveries and inventions in the realm of technical science. No government, no law, no custom can withstand its destructive activity when, from day to day, through the course of years, the press repeats and disseminates among the people its condemnations of institutions or of men. What is the secret of its strength? Certainly not the novelties and sensations with which the newspaper is filled, but its declared policy, the political and philosophical ideas propagated in its articles, the selection and classification of its news and rumors, and the peculiar illumination which it casts upon them. The newspaper has usurped the position of judicial observer of the events of the day. It judges not only the actions and words of men, but affects a knowledge of their unexpressed opinions, their intentions, and their enterprises. It praises and condemns at discretion, and incites some, threatens others, drags to pillory one, and others exalts as idols to be adored, and examples worthy of the emulation of all. In the name of public opinion, it bestows rewards on some, and punishes others with the severity of excommunication. The question naturally occurs, who are these representatives of this terrible power, public opinion? Whence is derived their right and authority to rule in the name of the community, to demolish existing institutions, and to proclaim new ideals of ethics and legislation? But no one attempts to answer this question. All talk loudly of the liberty of the press as the first and essential element of social well-being. Even in Russia, so libeled by the lying press of Europe, such words are heard. Our so-called Slavophiles, with amazing inconsistency, share the same delusion, although their avowed object is to reform and renovate the institutions of their country upon a historical basis. Having joined the chorus of liberals in alliance with the propagandists of revolution, they proclaim exactly in the manner of the West. Public opinion, that is, the collective thought, guided by the natural love of right in all, is the final judge in all matters of public interest. Therefore, no restriction upon freedom of speech can be allowed, for such restriction can only express the tyranny of the minority over the will of the mass. Such is the current proposition of the newest liberalism. It is accepted by many in good faith, and there are few who, having troubled to analyze it, have discerned how it is based upon falsehood and self-deception. It conflicts with the first principles of logic, for it is based on the fallacious premise that the opinions of the public and of the press are identical. To test the validity of this claim, it is only needful to consider the origin of newspapers and the characters of their makers. Any vagabond babbler or unacknowledged genius, any enterprising tradesman with his own money or with the money of others, may found a newspaper, even a great newspaper. He may attract a host of writers and feuilletonists ready to deliver judgment on any subject at a moment's notice. He may hire illiterate reporters to keep him supplied with rumors and scandals. His staff is then complete. From that day, he sits in judgment on all the world, on ministers and administrators, on literature and art, on finance and industry. It is true that the new journal becomes a power only when it is sold in the market, that is, when it circulates among the public. For this talent is needed, and the matter published must be attractive and congenial for the readers. Here we might think was some guarantee of the moral value of the undertaking. Men of talent will not serve a feeble or contemptible editor or publisher. The public will not support a newspaper which is not a faithful echo of public opinion. This guarantee is fictitious. Experience proves that money will attract talent under any conditions, and that talent is ready to write as its paymaster requires. Experience proves that the most contemptible persons, retired moneylenders, Jewish factors, news vendors, and bankrupt gamblers may found newspapers, secure the services of talented writers, and place their editions on the market as organs of public opinion. The healthy taste of the public is not to be relied upon. The great mass of readers, idlers for the most part, is ruled less by a few healthy instincts than by a base and despicable hankering for idle amusement, and the support of the people may be secured by any editor who provides for the satisfaction of these hankerings, for the love of scandal, and for intellectual pruriency of the basest kind. Of this we meet with evidence daily. Even our own capital, no search is necessary to demand it. It is enough to note the supply and demand at the news vendors' shops and at the railway stations. All of us have observed the triviality of conversation in society. In provincial towns and in government capitals, the recreations of the people are well known. Gambling, scandal, and anecdotes are the chief. Even conversation on the so-called social and political questions takes in a great measure the form of censure and aphorisms, plentifully supplemented with scandal and anecdote. This is a rich and fruitful soil for the tradesmen of literature, and there, as poisonous fungi, spring up organs of calumny, ephemeral and permanent, impudently extolling themselves as organs of public opinion. The great part which is the idle life of government towns is played by anonymous letters and lampoons, which, unhappily, are so common among us, is played in the newspaper by correspondents sent from various quarters or composed in the editorial offices by the reports and rumors invented by ignorant reporters and by the atrocious practice of blackmailing, often the strongest weapon of the newspaper press. Such a paper may flourish, attain consideration as an organ of public opinion, and be immensely remunerative to its owners, while no paper conducted upon firm moral principles or founded to meet the healthier instincts of the people could compete with it for a moment. This phenomenon is worthy of close inspection, and we find in it the most incongruous product of modern culture, the more incongruous when the principles of the new liberalism have taken root. By the sanction of election, the authority of the popular will is needed for every institution where the ruling power is vested in the hands of individuals and derived from the suffrages of the majority in the representative assemblies. For the journalist with a power comprehending all things requires no sanction, He derives his authority from no election. He receives support from no one. His newspaper becomes an authority in the state, and for this authority, no endorsement is required. The man in the street may establish such an organ and exercise the concomitant authority with an irresponsibility enjoyed by no other power in the world. That this is in no way exaggeration, there are innumerable proofs. How often have superficial and unscrupulous journalists paved the way for revolution, fomented irritation into enmity, and brought about desolating wars? For conduct such as this, a monarch would lose his throne, a minister would be disgraced, impeached, and punished. But the journalist stands dry above the waters he has disturbed. From the ruin he has caused, he rises triumphant and briskly continues his destructive work. This is by no means the worst. When a judge has power to dishonor us, to deprive us of our property and our freedom, he receives his power from the hands of the state only after such prolonged labor and experience as qualify him for his calling. His power is restricted by rigorous laws, his judgments are subject to revision by higher powers, and his sentence may be altered or commuted. The journalist has the fullest power to defame and dishonor me, to injure my material interests, even to restrict my liberty by attacks which force me to leave my place of abode. These judicial powers he has usurped. No higher authority has conferred them upon him. He has never proven by examination his fitness to exercise them. He has in no way shown his trustworthiness or impartiality. His court is ruled by no formal procedure, and from his judgment there lies no appeal. Its defenders assure us that the press itself heals the wounds it has inflicted, but any thinking mind can see that these are mere idle words. The attacks of the press on individuals may cause irreparable injury. Retractions and explanations can in no way give them full satisfaction. Not half of those who read the denunciatory article will read the apology or the explanation, and in the minds of the mass of frivolous readers, insulting or calumnious suggestions leave behind an ineffaceable stain. Criminal prosecution for defamation is but the feeblest defense, and civil action seldom succeeds in exposing the offender, while it subjects the offender to fresh attack. The journalist, moreover, has 1,000 means of wounding and terrifying individuals without furnishing them with sufficient grounds for legal prosecution. It is hard to imagine a despotism more irresponsible and violent than the despotism of printed words. Is it not strange and irrational, then, that those who struggle most for the preservation of this despotism are the impassioned champions of freedom, the ferocious enemies of legal restrictions and of all interference by the established authority? We cannot help remembering those wise men who went mad because they knew of their wisdom. There is nothing more remarkable in this century of advancement than the development of journalism to its present state as a terribly active social force. The importance of the press first began to increase after the Revolution of July 1830. It doubled its influence after the Revolution of 1848. Since then, it has grown in power not only year by year, but day by day. Already governments have begun to measure their strength against this new force, but it has become impossible to imagine not only public but even individual life without the newspaper, so that the suppression of newspapers, if it were possible, would mean as much to daily life as the cessation of railway communications. Without doubt, the newspaper serves the world as a powerful instrument of culture, but while we acknowledge the convenience and profit derived from the dissemination of knowledge among the people, and from the interchange of thought and opinion, we cannot ignore the dangers imminent from the unbounded growth of the press. We cannot refuse to recognize with a feeling of terror the fatal, mysterious, and disintegrating force which threatens the future of humanity. Every day the newspaper brings us a mass of varied news. How much of this is of real use to our lives and to our educational development? How much of it is fit to feed in our souls the sacred flame of aspiration unto good? How much is there not to flatter our baser instincts and impulses? We are told that the newspaper gives what the taste of the readers demands. that its level reaches the level of the reader's taste. But to this we may reply that demand would not be so great were the supply less energetically pushed. If news alone were published, the case would be different. But no, it is offered in a special form, embellished with personal opinions, and accompanied by anonymous but very decided commentaries. Papers controlled by serious persons, of course, exist, but such are few, while to the making of newspapers there is no end, and no morning passes without some writer, unknown to me, whom perhaps I should not care to know, obtruding upon me his views, expressed with all the authority of public opinion. What is graver still, however, is that this newspaper addresses not only a single class, but all men, some of whom can barely spell out a page of print, and others, to each, a ready-made judgment upon everything, in such a seductive form that, little, by force of habit, the reader loses all wish for and feels absolved from the duty of forming his own opinion. Some have no ability for forming opinions, and accept mechanically the opinions of their newspapers, while others, born with a capacity for original thought, in the trials and anxieties of daily life, have not the time to think, and welcome the newspaper which does their thinking for them. The harm that results from this is too visible, especially in our time when powerful currents of thought are everywhere in action, wearing down the corners and distinctions of individual thought, reducing to uniformity the so-called public opinion, and weakening all independent development of thought, of will, and of character. Moreover, for many of the people, the newspaper is the only source of education, a contemptible, pretended education. The varied mass of news and information found in the newspaper being taken by its readers as real knowledge, with which he proceeds to arm himself complacently. This we may take as one of the reasons why our age brings forth so few complete individuals, so few men of character. The modern press is like the fabled hero who, having inscribed upon his visor some mysterious characters, the symbols of divine truth, struck all his enemies with terror, till one intrepid warrior rubbed from his helm the mysterious letters. On the visor of our press today is written the legend, "Public opinion," and its influence is irresistible. In the present constitution of society, the press has become an institution which cannot be ignored, but which must be considered side by side with the existing institutions which constitute the state and are subject to control and responsibility, for there is no institution which may be accounted uncontrolled and irresponsible. The greater the growth of the press, the more clearly appear, side by side with the apparent advantages of rational and conscientious publicity, those social dangers which it creates. One of these dangers is the production and multiplication of a class of journalists, adventurers, and writers who feed and grow fat upon the pen. The more serious workers on the serious press never cease to complain bitterly of the multiplication of these fellows, with whom they are ashamed to be associated, even in a name. In all the great states, in all the great markets, out of this rabble of scribbling brethren springs a class of men whom it is no exaggeration to describe as parasites on society. In fact, these men stand on a special footing in relation to the general welfare, which should unite and inspire all institutions. They are in no way directly interested in the preservation of social order, in the reconciliation of opposing minds and contending parties. This is in the nature of things. The newspaper lives and is nourished by daily events and news. In troubled times, its circulation increases, when its energies are expended in the dissemination of rumors and sensations which alarm and irritate the minds of the people, while on the other hand, in times of quietude, its circulation is sensibly diminished. Hardly has trouble begun when the streets are flooded with new publications, which discord nourishes till peace returns, when they vanish as quickly as they appeared. But even in quiet times some must live, and for that end new agitations are fomented, new interests developed, and sensations invented or exaggerated. Those journals which pretend to seriousness find matter in the consideration of political questions and in the frothy polemics which daily appear. The journalist is ready at a moment's notice to decide any imaginable political question, and by his position he is bound to consider and decide it immediately, for he is a servant not of thought or of reason, but a servant of the actual day. No sooner does the thought occur than it flies to paper, thence to the printing press. There must be no delay. No time is allowed for the ripening of thought. You ask these men, are they ashamed? Not at all. They would laugh in your face at such a question. They are persuaded that they render great services to society. They resemble in this the ancient augurs who made merry both over themselves and over their dupes. If the journalist is to attract attention, he must raise his voice to a scream. This his trade requires. An exaggeration capable of passing into pathos becomes for him his second nature. When he enters upon a controversy, he is ready to denounce his adversary as a fool, a rascal, or a dunce, to heap upon him unimaginable insults. This costs his conscience nothing. It is required by journalistic etiquette. His cries resemble the protestations of a trader in the marketplace when he cheats his customers. These are the practices and qualities which unhappily flourish in the press and among its workers. It would be very laughable were it not so harmful. It is harmful because the press now occupies an area in which are discussed and decided the gravest questions of internal and external policy, questions of economy and administration, indissolubly bound with the vital interests of the people. For all this, passion is but a weak equipment. Sage reasoning and maturity and sanity of thought are also needed. Needed, too, is knowledge of the history of peoples and of practical life. Yet in Europe, things have gone so far that from the ranks of journalism rise orators and statesmen who, together with the advocates with whom they share the capacity for abusive language, constitute in Parliament an overwhelming force. In the French chamber, there are but 22 representatives of large and 50 of small property, while all the talking strength belongs to journalists, of whom there are 59, and to advocates, of whom there are 107. And these are the representatives of their country, and the judges of the lives and requirements of the people. The people groans at this confusion of legislators, but it cannot deliver itself. This has been Mr. Patriarch. Thanks for joining me. Tune in next time for Chapter 6, Public Instruction, of Reflections of a Russian Statesman by Konstantin Petrovich Pobyedonostseff. Any support for the channel is greatly appreciated. Links to do so can be found below to PayPal and Subscribestar. Thank you very much for watching again. Thank you for the support, and I'll see you next time. Patriarch out.